The committee is resumed. When we broke for Kai, we were debating the Social Housing Reform Transaction Mandate Bill Part 2. Maribeth Davidson was speaking, and she has 4 minutes and 55 seconds remaining.
Thank you indeed, Mr Speaker. We are talking about Part 2 of the Social Housing Reform Transaction Mandate Bill. This particular part of the bill is the part which enables the privatisation, and therefore a really important part of what this legislation is trying to do. I want to address earlier statements about the Glen Innes community and a challenge to ask the opposition side, and particularly because the Green Party have been mentioning them a lot, what else we would do. And because Part 2 of this bill concentrates on removing state and public assets for a mix of private ownership, community and state housing as well. But the key point here is I can, and the Green Party can actually discuss the mix of some private housing alongside community and state as part of solving the housing crisis. However, the driver has to be to solve the housing crisis. There are no guarantees that the driver of this bill is to actually do that. It is simply a state assets flog-off. We have to be really clear about the drivers, particularly as set out in Part 2. What has happened in Glen Innes should be a very clear warning to us. They've been very clear. The process has been wanting. The process has been flawed. They're feeling very disposable as a community. They have been displaced in order for megabucks housing, megabucks private housing, upwards of 600k. That is not at all affordable and accessible to the already established community. Those are the words that they have been telling us in their plea and in their campaign to be listened to. You know, there's some nice water there, there's some nice boat clubs along that water, it's fertile, it's a fertile community. Sorry, it grows plants well. And so, you know, they have been feeling very displaced about the intentions behind the drive of the state housing evictions that they have faced. There are no guarantees that those properties and lands will not end up in private hands eventually, even though there is an incremental step to flog public houses off. So it has gone to the Tāmaki Redevelopment Company as part of an incremental step to eventually be able to flog public housing off in public land. So yes, I do want to stick up for the Glen Innes community, particularly around the process of what has happened there. So sometimes I just wish there was a little bit more honesty about what is driving legislation from this government. That's all, a little bit more honesty about what is driving the legislation from this government, and particularly in this bill. There are no guarantees that more and more state assets will end up to profit private ownership and particularly property developers. Yes, I know. So therefore, if we are talking about private development, the private market has never been successful in providing healthy, affordable, accessible homes for people who need them. And there is so much need. There is a crisis at the moment, and this bill is not the answer to it. This bill has got nothing to do with solving the major issues in front of us about the housing crisis. So I did want to take a short call, Mr. Speaker, in particular to respond to the raising of the Glen Innes community issue. Thank you.
Before the member takes a call, I am going to issue a warning to the House, and that is that we are now in the committee stages of the bill. We're discussing Part 2. It's got a very big clause in Clause 8, and it's and I have been listening to the debate from my room earlier, and what I am going to indicate to people is that they are going to have, the general principle of the bill has been accepted. What we're now discussing is whether Part 2, in particular Clause 8, is the proper way of implementing it, why for and why not. And so I want to leave that to members because there has already been a closure moved, and if there's ongoing non-relevant speeches, then of course it becomes much easier to accept one.